you were touring with Greg Allman last year, or was it officially an Allman Brothers thing?
There was an Allman Brothers reunion last year. I was not a part of it because of the Rolling Stones album and tour. The association with the Allman Brothers was from 72 to 76, and then in 1988 we had 2 concert reunions that I was involved in.
一番最後はね、
prior to the reunion tour to be involved, and I told him I would very much like to, but because of the conflict at the time, the Stones tour was questionable. But when it became apparent, then I had to let them know that I couldn't do it, and they obviously went ahead and got their personnel.
本当は誘われたThe Allman Brothers.
Yes.
How come? Why did you give priority to the Stones?
Well, having been involved with the Stones since '82, I saw this as a priority. There's a couple of things. One, the death of Ian Stewart in 1985. It was a very big blow to all of us. However, it did change my role in the Stones, and I have a wider and broader role in the band now. And so they were very interested in me coming along for the album and for the tour. And I saw it as a better opportunity for me, a higher profile, and how could you turn down Rolling Stones today? It looked like a lot of fun, and it was. It was the best decision, and it was the greatest tour I've ever done.
82年からね、what does it mean to you to have been a member in the Allmans in the early 70s, sort of a legendary outfit there at the time? How do you look back on that in retrospect?
It was a wonderful time. I was very young. The way it came about was that the bands that I worked with prior to my association with the Allmans, which was Alex Taylor, James Taylor's elder brother, and Dr. John, both toured with the Allmans and opened up. Quite often I would stay and listen to the Allmans, and because I played an acoustic piano, and because after our set the piano would be backstage, I would quite often play on my own while the Allman Brothers was playing. I learned the songs, learned the repertoire, learned the grooves, and I liked the band a lot. So in '72, they asked me to play. Actually, it started to be Greg's solo album, Laid Back, and it evolved into being the Brothers and Sisters album. It came as somewhat of a shock to me to be playing at that time, which was supposed to be Greg's sessions in the Allman Brothers. But it all happened very quickly, and about 2 weeks later, they asked me to join the band. So, looking back on it, it was a great experience. It was a bit of, I think, American rock history. I was a fan of the Allman Brothers before I joined them, so it was a great honor for me to be involved. I would like to think I had some contribution. I think it was interesting when Dwayne died, because it was such a guitar-oriented band, that they decided not to replace the guitar, but to add a different instrument. I think in retrospect, had it been anybody else, a sax, anything, I think it would have been a wise decision, because you just don't replace Dwayne. And I was very comfortable with the band, and we had some great times and great years.
Yeah, it was that's a good point you made there. They evolved remarkably there upon your entering the band. I have to forget the classic story of Jessica there.
Jessica.
Yeah, goosebumps. はい、うまいね、いきさん。Sea Level was essentially Allman Brothers without Greg and Dickie. And you added, I guess, what was the guitar for
Jimmy Knowles.
Yeah, Jimmy Knowles, right? But I mean, it was essentially the backup
the
band.
Rhythm section.
Yeah, the rhythm section, yeah. How did that come about? I mean, was it a matter of just Greg and Dickie going off in their own directions and leaving you guys to your own devices?
Well, what happened was, J-Mo, the drummer, and Lamar Williams, the bassist, and myself, we just loved to play. And even when we were on the road, we would oftentimes rent an extra room, a ballroom in the hotel, and set up, and the three of us would play. And We would go to the sound checks early and play. Any opportunity to do that, we did. And we developed a little repertoire, and when it became obvious that the Allmans had inner fighting and disagreements were going to break up, we sat down, had a meeting, and decided to keep at least what we had together and build on it.
その3人、Bill Goldman, so you think in the waning days of the Allman Brothers, you guys weren't able to do maybe what you had wanted to do, or what the band was, you weren't able to realize the potential of the band?
Well, the three of us that kept it together hated to see the Allman Brothers come to an end. We didn't want that to happen at all. We tried as best we could to convince the others to put the personal feelings aside and let's worry about the music. Let's continue, because we felt we had something very unique and that we could have moved on with it. But it became apparent that this wasn't going to happen. And when it did, then we made the decision to do what we did.
He describes Sea Level as a rather unique project in that it took elements of blues and fusion and jazz and kind of mixed them with southern stuff you guys had already been doing. Was it a concept you had in mind for some time, or did this just sort of naturally evolve on its own?
It was pretty much an involvement. I didn't really know that much about jazz music until I met J-Mo. J-Mo turned me on to Coltrane.
Is that right?
Yeah. On to, well, of course, the other names I knew, but very sketchily, Miles Davis. But he turned me on to so many players, Cannonball Adderley, Ahmad Jamal, Keith Jarrett, Chick Corea, all these people, and then it just snowballed. I became very, very interested in these people and the music, and I started listening to it a lot, and I became influenced by it. My original background was basically in rhythm and blues and in British wave, Beatles, Stones.
Yeah, you were a real pounder on those early episodes.
Yes, exactly. And so this thing through J-Mo evolved during the time that we played together, basically. And then I thought, well, maybe it will be unique to have a southern flavor to a fusion type group, and that's why we pursued it as that. I think the downside of it was that was it an instrumental band, was it a vocal band? There was not quite a focus sometimes, and perhaps that's what kept us from being more popular than we were. I was quite pleased with what we did, but I think if we would have been able to focus in, it could have been even more popular and sold more records on that. But no regrets. We had a great time with that band.
For the casual observer in Japan, it seems like Southern rock sort of drifted away. Allman's dissolved. We lost Sea Level after a while. Then it's going to, some of the members lost in a plane crash. So there's still a lot. そういう現在の have bands now like ZZ Top 38 Special, sort of standard bearers, I guess you would call them. What do you think of the situation now? Something like is it even a relevant term anymore?
Unfortunately, I think not. It seems to have dissolved and disappeared, and I think it's a shame. You're right. The standard bearers are 38 Special and those types of bands. There is some remnants of Leonard Skinner still around. They did a reunion tour. Marshall Tucker Band, a similar situation. The band broke up. There's two of the original guys, and they hired some other personnel. So it's not really what it was in the beginning, and the tradition hasn't really carried on. I think a lot of the problem is the fact that there's no longer an entity like Capricorn Records, which is truly a Southern entity. The label, the whole outfit was based in the South and worked out of the South, and it had all the feeling of those things, and it made the music more traditional Southern. Now, people are so worried about selling records and being in the mainstream. So 38 Special, which I think is a good band, but I wouldn't really call them a Southern band. They're just a pop rock and roll band. Yeah. All due respect to them. I think they write good songs, and I quite like what they do, but it's not Southern, I think. expansion of the country market. A lot of those bands that were once termed Southern rock have eased over towards the country side of things, like Charlie Daniels. And you wouldn't really call him a rock and roller anymore. He's pretty much a country act. However, because country has broadened its limitations, it's now pretty much accepted as a country entity, I think. And bands like Alabama and look at Lyle Lovett, for heaven's sake. He's still considered a country artist, I think, for the most part. But what he does is certainly not all country, is it?
Yeah.
I think because of the expansion of that market, some of the Southern rock ideas and bands have been sort of sucked into that.
What's his name? Tour back in '82.
Bill Graham was tour director. Of course, the Allman Brothers was one of his favorite bands. When I came into the picture with the Allmans, I think he looked at me with some skepticism. Who is this guy that's going to come in now? And I sort of won him over. And we did a few concerts with him with Sea Level. He was very good to us. Then there was a period of time when I didn't communicate with Bill for 4 or 5 years. And when the tour, the Tattoo tour started happening, Nick and Keith wanted to try somebody different, and Bill, being tour director, mentioned my name. And that's how it came about.
They didn't have any objection to it or anything? Or they just said, oh, yeah, great, let's give it a try.
Well, yes, that's the way it went. There was several people that came in to audition. Let me see if I can help you else. David Sanchez was in. I know he's the only one that comes to mind, but there was 2 or 3 others that came in. And they kept me there for a little bit longer than everybody else, and it just worked out with the European tour.
Did Stewart do that tour back in '82?
We did. There was 2 keyboard players on the on the American portion. It was Ian Stewart and Ian McClagan. And then in Europe, they decided to use me, and it was Stu and myself. That's another thing maybe we could get into a little bit, and that's Stu and mine relationship. I think Stu was the main reason I got the gig, because he quite liked that Southern boy, Georgia boy. And I played him the song "Georgia on My Mind." I think that decided him that it was that I was okay. We spent quite a lot of time together on that tour. And we would go through England, stay in London. He insisted that I stay with him, not in a hotel. He had 2 pianos, and we would play together. He turned me on to a lot of boogie-woogie players that I was unaware of, and reintroduced me to some that I was aware of. And we became very close friends. And when his death came, it was quite a blow, but I think by virtue of the fact that I had spent so much time with him, I knew his style, we were similar, it was pretty easy for me to slide into that role, which was part of what I do now.
How's it that you and Ian McClagan divided up duties on that tour, though? Why didn't just one of you do the whole thing along with you?
Well, that's something I guess Nick and Keith would have to answer. I really don't know. The decision was made to carry me out and maybe on the European portion.
Is that right? Well, when you were a teenager, you used to do Stones covers in clubs, so you were able to fit right in there?
Yes, it's interesting. I played guitar in a band we had called the Misfits when I was 13 or something. And we would play at the YMCA every Friday night. We had a standing gig, and Saturday morning we had our own little TV show, which was fashioned after American Bandstand. And as I mentioned to you earlier, one of the main things that was popular at that time was British wave music. So that included Beatles and Stones, and in particular, the songs that were popular of the day were Satisfaction, This Could Be the Last Time, It's All Over Now. So most all of those songs I knew from playing them then. I played them either on guitar or on keyboard, because at that time I was doing both.
Yeah, even about a couple 100,000. Yes, so, but you fit right in there?
Well, I think what he's referring to is in one interview I did, they asked me what did I do to prepare myself for auditioning for the Rolling Stones, and my answer was that the audition came down to me very quickly. I had, it was a matter of 2 days I was there. So the day before I flew up, I stayed up and listened to Rolling Stone records, and I realized I know these songs. You know, I've played them before, and the ones I didn't know I knew because I knew them on the radio. And I knew the style, and hey, listen, they're influenced by the same things I am, aren't they? You know, Delta blues, R&B. So it was the old saying, we went to different schools together.
So you did various recording work with the Stones and also on Nick's solo project after that. You obviously you get along well musically. Is it also work on a personal level too?
Yes, it's interesting to me how things evolved in that respect. When I first came in, I think maybe I was favored more by from Mick's point of view. But as time went on, I became closer to Keith. How can I say? Keith is a little more approachable than Mick. You know, Mick is a very congenial, friendly man, but he's also very businesslike. And it's just easier to spend time with Keith and to get closer. But I see myself as somewhat of a catalyst and a go-between between the two, because I think one reason that Rolling Stones are so great is the difference between Mick and Keith. As with any band, Dickie and Greg were the same way, very much opposite. And there was a lot of times when there was tension and pushing and pulling, and in that situation, a person is needed to sort of be a go-between. And, well, the other guys, like for instance, Ronnie Wood, fits that bill as well, but Ron's in the band, so there's times politically when it's easier for someone that's not a direct band member to take on that role than it is somebody that's so closely involved, like Woody. So I think it's an interesting situation, the way things move and flow from a personal level. I mean, obviously, because of where I live and where they live, during the off times, I don't go see them as often as I would like, because I'm at home with my family and they're at home with theirs. But when I am in town, yes, I look them up and we do spend time together. And on the road, we socialize quite a lot.
So in the period you've been involved with Stone, it seems like it was one of the more, it was I guess a period sort of characterized by the friction between Nick and Keith. So I guess your role as catalyst was pretty important.
Well, it really manifested itself during the recordings of both Undercover and Dirty Work. Dirty Work, there was more tension than there's ever been, I think. And that was a very difficult time for everyone, to be honest with you. That wound up being a very Keith-influenced album, I think, because Keith would stay at the studio for long, long hours, and Mick would just come in and do his bits and sort of leave. And yes, it was both of those periods of time where there was a lot of tension going on. But I find it interesting that whereas most bands would very likely let that dissolve the group and break it up because they just say, I can't do it anymore, I just can't go on. I think it's interesting that the Stones, and that's one of the great things about them, find a way that we can overcome that. And I think that's really come to light on this recent project with Steel Wheels. They said, look, all this that we've been saying to each other, talking either in front of each other or behind each other's backs, let's forget about it. We work together great. Let's do what we do. Let's go on about it. And I think because of that attitude now, it's coming closer together. And there's a lot less tension. Everybody getting along much better.
In a good cycle. In a positive cycle.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
How do you want to? By the time you became involved with the Rolling Stones, obviously they were a solid unit. Every member had his own duty, his own role. At any time, did you feel like your contributions were being minimalized as a result of that, or at the same time, did you want to change the band or add to it in any way? Did you have anything specific in mind?
Well, first of all, I was quite pleased with the freedom they gave me. I've never been told what to play. I think they hired me because I do what I do, and that's never been a problem. The only times that I've objected to the situation is oftentimes in the records I tend to be buried in the mix. I think my contribution was good enough to where it shouldn't have been buried in the mix, but that's perhaps a prejudiced viewpoint. I don't know. But I think the present situation on tour has been just great. I mean, everybody that has come to the concert has said, you know, you can hear the keyboard is prominent and the contribution is good, and I feel good about that. You know, I mean, if I felt like I was just a decoration, I wouldn't want to be doing this. And, because I feel like I do have good responsibilities and a good role. Really, now I feel like I'm kind of assistant musical director. I mean, Keith is the Keith band, you know, as far as the music in the band, working with the rhythm section and all of that. Mick, of course, is Mick Jagger. He's up front, he's leading the band. But I tend to be the liaison between Keith and the band. I give a lot of cues, I count a lot of songs off, that sort of thing, and I feel real comfortable in it. So the being buried in the mix is my only objection.
That's interesting. I guess so. In the second part of this question, what did you want to add to the music? I suppose you could summarize by saying you just wanted to put your autograph on it.
Yes.
Use your imprint.
Yes, exactly.
That's what you were there for?
You know, the keyboard has always been a part of the Rolling Stones. It's definitely a guitar band. Let's not deny that. But through the years, there's been Jack Mitchell, there's been Billy Preston, there's been Nicky Hopkins, Ian Stewart, and they all have added a distinct stamp on things. And yes, I would like to do the same thing.
Here's the when the Stones announced that they were going to do this tour, that they sort of immediately approached you. I don't know if that's the case or not.
Well,
they came to you immediately.
Well, yes, actually, backing up a bit, when the album was done, I was called in for that. I went to visit Keith when he was mixing his solo album. I was on tour with Fabulous Thunderbirds, and I was playing at Avery Fisher Hall. He was mixing around the corner. I went to see him after the concert, and he told me that they had a meeting and that they had 99% decided to get back together to do an album and a tour. And he told me at that time that I would get the call. And the initial process was done with just the band, you know, the writing and the initial track. And then I was called in to do my parts in the overdubs in London, and then of course to do the tour. So yes, it was call came really before the whole thing happened.
It was a shoo-in.
Excuse me?
It was a shoo-in.
Yes. Well, when Keith tells you something, you can take it to heart. And when he told me that, there was no doubt in my mind that when the time was right, I would get the call. I wasn't sure when it would happen, whether it would be to help out with the writing or to be on the tracks, and as it turned out, it was in the overdub process. But once he told me that, I knew it would happen.
The guts of the question there were, do you feel like you're becoming the sixth Stone, or are you interested?
Well, that's a dangerous term. That's Ian Stewart's position, and always will be, and I would never take that away. I think it's different. I think it's a difficult thing to put into words. No, I'm not the sixth Stone. I think maybe I'm the next thing to it. I don't know exactly how to put my role in perspective. I don't see myself as a Rolling Stone. The Rolling Stones are the five guys. And I quite like having that freedom, to be honest with you, because I play on a lot of other projects. And I want to do that.
So you kind of like to maintain your status as guest.
And as an independent contractor, shall we say. But I feel that I do have a very important role, and I feel like I have, put a stamp on what I do with the band. And I hope that if they decide to do anything else in the future, I'm confident that I will get the call for that too.
Bill, how does this tour so far stack up with the last one?
Miles above the last one.
Is that right?
Yes. I mean, that's not to say the '82 tour wasn't good. It was, but for instance, in the rehearsal process in '82, I think there was 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks of rehearsal. And the set, I don't think it ever varied from beginning to end. This time around, we had 2 months of rehearsal. We started out with a list of 75 songs, and it was a rather excruciating, difficult process to decide on the ones that would be played. But the scope of the set now is much broader than it was in '82. It covers more territory from the band's career. It's played more expertly. And one thing I haven't interjected that I should is Matt Clifford's involvement in the band. And Matt has had a positive influence on the situation as well. They often refer to us as high-tech and redneck. So, Matt basically, one of the positive involvements he has is that now, for instance, on, let's say, Ruby Tuesday, we can have the cello and the flute if he does those parts, and I do the traditional piano part. And that sort of follows all down the line for most all the songs. Anything that has a horn section or strings or other acoustics or electric sounds that were on the record, we can now reproduce those. Where in '82, we didn't have that. The technology wasn't as sophisticated, and it was just a different type of situation. Now, it's a much tighter band, a much more well-rehearsed band. The staging is completely different and much better, I think, now. And I think, overall, the attitude is stronger and more determined this time. I think the guys kind of said, look, if we're going to do this, it's got to be the best it's ever been, or it's not worth doing. And that attitude prevailed from beginning to the end of the tour. I was real pleased about that.
It seems like there was a lot of time until this tour to Japan.
A lot of time off?
Yeah.
Well, yes, it was a long process. Well, for them, it began in February to write the songs, record the album, do the tour. So basically, from February to December, it was steady work. I mean, for me, I came in June, so I was away from home for 5 months straight. You needed the break; you had to have it. We do have families.
Yeah.
So actually, I think the break was just right. Now it's time to go back to work.
It was about a month and a half off.
Yes, it was from 5 weeks.
I was. あと全然 I think of Guns N' Roses and Living Color. I mean, quite a bit younger than you.
Yes, they are. Yeah,
substantial. I mean, we're talking about these guys 10, 15 years younger.
Yes. Well, let's take them each individually. Guns N' Roses, quite honestly, don't blow my skirt up. They don't really do that much for me. They have an enormous popularity in the U.S. I don't know what it is here. Perhaps it's big here too. I have no objection to them. They don't really do that much for me. I did find that Axl Rose was surprisingly, as an individual, quite pleasant to work with. When we did the pay-per-view, and it was just Axl and Izzy sitting in with us on that Atlantic City day, they were very professional, and I thought they did a good job. But the band really doesn't do anything for me. Living Color, I think, is interesting. It's a little bit frantic for my taste, but I think they are excellent musicians. And again, they have an enormous popularity in the States. And they conducted themselves extremely professionally. They're wonderful people to be with and to work with. They were great on the whole tour. They cooperated with us in every respect. We became very close friends on them.
80年代 hired gun for the last 10 years, so I guess pretty much all of the 80s. What about desires for a solo career or a permanent band? Doesn't cross your mind?
Solo career, yes. To go on the road and spend 2 or 3 years developing my band doesn't appeal to me. I'm too old for that. But yes, I intend to do an album and albums. You know, I would ideally like to do maybe 1 album a year, do a short tour, and then continue to play with other people. I would like to gravitate towards production. I feel like I'm good in that role as a coordinator, a catalyst. And I've done some of that, and I'd like to do more of it. But I very much enjoy playing on these records with other people. I just recently played with John Hyam on his record. And last year I did Dave Edmunds, I did Beyond, a band from Atlanta called the Black Crows, a band from Canada called Grapes of Wrath, a guy named Joe Henry. And you see that the reason I like that is because it keeps you versatile. You know, you never get bored doing the same set, the same songs with one band. Fabulous Thunderbirds I worked with recently. So I would never want to lose that. I quite like dancing around from here to there. Yeah, you meet so many different people, and you can use this influence on that situation and hopefully create something new.
Finally, the Kuwata Orchestra. Are we, I guess, taking part in the sessions here with the Kuwata in Japan?
Well, I think, as I understand it, presently Kuwata is rehearsing for a tour for Southern All-Stars. I have been told that he would like to meet me, and I would very much like to meet him. How much time we have to spend together and what might happen is sort of up in the air. As I understand it, he's concentrating on his rehearsals right now, so I don't know that we'll have much time to interact as musicians, but I would like to think that at some point we will kind of start this relationship with the Muse America and this band called the Privates that we're discussing producing, which I think would be good. I did see a video that Kuwata did with Hall & Oates, so I'm very interested to start a relationship.
But that's the only exposure you've had to his music, that video?
Yes. I haven't heard the album. Norio Yamamoto, who works for Muse America, gave me the Privates records, but I haven't gotten close.
What did you think of the video yourself?
Well, I thought it was very good, yes. It didn't give me a complete feel of what I think he might be capable of doing. It was just such a small taste. I want to hear more. It was enough to make me want to hear more, let's put it that way.
How could you possibly have a band called the Southern All-Stars and that's after that?
I can't believe it. Blew my mind. And what even further was interesting was the Privates album, which was recorded in Bogalusa, Louisiana, and had gospel choirs and slide guitars all over.
Right?
Yeah. And, I just did an interview with Keyboard Magazine before this interview, and Gakko, the keyboard player with the Privates, it was kind of a round table discussion, and we have similar influences, you know, Professor Longhair, a lot of blues piano players. And it's surprising to me that a Japanese band would have those type of influences somehow. So I find it's very interesting and opens up a whole new world for me.
When you hear them perform that kind of music, though, it doesn't strike you as odd at all? It sounds pretty natural?
Well, I think the approach that they have is rather authentic. You know, they've done their homework. It's obvious that they have listened to those records, and you know, I think it's a young band, right? So that band in particular, they have a little maturing to do, I think. But they have it. You know, you can hear it. It's just a little green.
That's what, just noting that Kuwata called that band the Southern All-Stars because they had originally been attracted by Southern rock. I guess it's kind of a flattering thing to know that somebody in the country that's far away is taking the time and in trouble to follow them.
Well, it was surprising to me when Norio told me. Well, first of all, Norio contacted me out of the blue when I was on tour with the Stones. I didn't have any idea who he was. And then as we developed our relationship, and I was most surprised by the influence that the Allman Brothers Band had on these bands. you know, being on tour with the Rolling Stones, that wasn't really the big issue. The big issue was the past and the Allmans and the Southern influence that was going on and that is going on at present with these bands. And it was surprising to me, very surprising. I mean, you have no idea. I mean, the Allmans never came here. They never came and played. And it's my first trip to Japan, so it's a whole new world for me. I'm surprised and very, very flattered that they know the music. And I found out further that the C-level CDs had been released here.
Sure.
And there will be a compilation CD released in America in late spring on C-level by Polygram. But when they called me and approached me about that, and we discussed what I was doing and that we were going to Japan, he said, "Oh, well, by the way, they've already released one and perhaps more CDs there." So very flattering and very surprising.
That's You were touring with Greg Allman last year. Was it officially an Allman Brothers thing?
There was an Allman Brothers reunion last year. I was not a part of it because of the Rolling Stones album and tour. The association with the Allman Brothers was from 72 to 76, and then in 1988 we had two concert reunions that I was involved in.
一番最後はね、
prior to the reunion tour to be involved, and I told him I would very much like to, but because of the conflict at the time that the Stones tour was questionable, but when it became up to me coming along for the album and for the tour, and I saw it as a better opportunity for me, a higher profile. And, you know, how could you turn down Rolling Stones together? You know, it looked like a lot of fun, and it was. It was the best decision, and it was the greatest tour I've ever done.
82年からね, what does it mean to you to have been a member in the Allmans in the early 70s, sort of a legendary outfit there at the time? How do you look back on that in retrospect?
It was a wonderful time. I was very young. The way it came about was that the bands that I worked with prior to mostly Greg's sessions in the Allman Brothers. But it all happened very quickly, and about 2 weeks later they asked me to join the band. So looking back on it, it was a great experience. It was a bit of, I think, American rock history. I was a fan of the Allman Brothers before I joined them, so it was a great honor for me to be involved. I would like to think I had some contribution. I think it was interesting when Dwayne died, because it was such a guitar-oriented band, that they decided not to replace the guitar, but to add a different instrument. I think in retrospect, had it been anybody else, a sax, anything, I think it would have been a wise decision, because you just don't replace Dwayne. And my association with the Allmans, which was Alex Taylor, James Taylor's elder brother, and Dr. John, both toured with the Allmans and opened up. Quite often I would stay and listen to the Allmans, and because I played an acoustic piano, and because after our set the piano would be backstage, I would quite often play on my own while the Allman Brothers was playing. I learned the songs, learned the repertoire, learned the grooves, and I liked the band a lot. So in 72, they asked me to play, actually it started to be Greg's solo album, Laid Back, and it evolved into being the Brothers and Sisters album. It came as somewhat of a shock to me to be playing at that time, which was apparent, and I had to let them know that I couldn't do it. And they obviously went ahead and got the personnel.
本当は誘われたthe Allman Brothers.
Yes.
How come? Why did you give priority to the Stones?
Well, having been involved with the Stones since '82, you know, I saw this as a priority there's a couple of things. One, the death of Ian Stewart in 1985.
Right.
It was a very big blow to all of us. However, it did change my role in the Stones, and I have a wider and broader role in the band now. And so they were very interested.